Welcome back, Tiny Tots. This month is October. That means trick or treat. If you're new here, welcome. Please like and subscribe. This week we're going to be reading The Ghost of Wuzzleberg. Boo! Shouted Whoopsie. It's fun to be scary. I want to win the prize for the scariest costume at the Halloween party tonight. Let's see if I can scare Widget, Waddle, and Daisy with my ghost costume. Whoopsie crept up behind Walden. Boo! He shouted. Oh, hello, Whoopsie, Walden said calmly. How does this pumpkin face look? It looks great, said Whoopsie as he walked away. Daisy was arranging Halloween decorations. Boo! Whoopsie shouted. Hi, Whoopsie, said Daisy cheerily. Aren't these cookie spooky flowers the cutest? Whoopsie sighed. Sure, Daisy. Whoopsie tried to scare Widget. Woo! He moaned. Hey there, Whoopster! Widget said excitedly. Have you seen my latest invention? It's the Party Pal 3000. It blows up balloons, shoots confetti, plays music, and takes photos. That's cool. I'll never scare anybody with this old ghost costume, Whoopsie said with a sigh. Maybe I'll find a really scary costume in the costume room. What's really scary? Whoopsie wondered. A witch? A werewolf? A lawyer? Frankenstein's monster? Not scary enough, said Whoopsie. Whoopsie was still trying on costumes when Birdie Bird fluttered in through the window and landed on a box. Hi, Birdie Bird, Whoopsie said. What's in this box? Whoopsie looked through it. Oh, it's just a pile of junk, he said, disappointed. But then he had an idea. Maybe I can make something scary out of this stuff, he said. I can be a scary monster from Planet Doom. Whoopsie got to work on his new costume. Grrr, Whoopsie growled. My new costume is way scarier than the silly old ghost costume. He flung the ghost costume behind him, not realizing the sheet landed right on top of Birdie Bird. Later that night, the Halloween party was getting started. Walden was dressed up as a king. Widget wore a homemade turbo ratchet costume, and Daisy was a beautiful flowery flower princess. But somebody was missing. Where's Whoopsie? Widget asked. Whoopsie was waiting for just the right moment to appear. He spotted Daisy admiring her costume. Roar! He roared. Eek! Daisy shrieked. This is fun! Whoopsie giggled to himself. He was just about to show Daisy that it was only him dressed up as a monster when he saw a white shape floating behind him. It's a ghost! Whoopsie cried. Whoopsie ran as fast as he could, but he slipped on an apple. As he bounced across the floor, all the pieces of his costume came off. Whoopsie! Daisy cried. You're the monster! You scared us! Run! Whoopsie called. It's a real ghost! The ghost was right behind Whoopsie when the sheet got caught on the top of a pumpkin. Underneath the sheet was Birdie Bird! Birdie Bird? You're the ghost? Whoopsie exclaimed. I never thought that old ghost costume could be so scary. Your attention, please, Walden announced. It's time to give out the costume prizes. The winner for the Scary's costume is Beardy Beard. And we have another winner, Waldo continued. The prize for being the most scared at the party goes to Whoopsie. Yep, Whoopsie shouted. I sure did have fun being scary at the party. But being scared was just as fun. Happy Halloween, everyone. Wow, wow, boo! Wasn't that a great... Hooray for Halloween, Curious George. By Margaret and H. A. Harries. This is George. He was a good little monkey. He was always very curious. One day George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were on their way to a party at Mrs. Gray's house. George could not wait. He liked parties, and he was looking forward to seeing Mrs. Gray. But when the door opened, George did not see Mrs. Gray at all. He saw a witch. "Don't be afraid, George," said the man with the yellow hat. "This witch is our friend." The witch took off her mask. It was Mrs. Gray after all. "Oh dear," she said. "Did I forget to tell you this was a costume party?" George had never been to a costume party before. Inside he saw many people that he knew. They were all wearing costumes. There was his friend Betsy, dressed up like an astronaut. And was that Bill? Why, he looked just like a mummy. George wanted to wear a costume too. "I have some dress-up clothes upstairs," said Mrs. Gray. "Would you like to use them to make a costume, George?" Mrs. Gray took George to a room with a big trunk filled with clothes. "Borrow anything you like, George," she said. "I have just the thing for your friend downstairs." George tried on lots of costumes. The first was too big. The next was too small. Another was too silly. And this one was too scary. At last, George found a costume that was just right. George was a rodeo cowboy. He wore a vest and pants with a fringe. He even had a lasso and a hat. If only he could see himself in the mirror. George was curious. Could he see himself if he stood on the bed? No, he needed to jump higher. George bounced on the bed, just a little, but he couldn't see. He bounced a little more. Soon George was having so much fun he forgot all about looking in the mirror. He bounced as high as he could, until... crash! George bounced off the bed. He smashed into the night table and got tangled up in the tablecloth. Suddenly everything went dark. George heard the people downstairs gasp. What was that? Was it a ghost? A ghost? George did not want to meet up with the ghost alone. He dashed out of the room and down the hall. He wanted to get back to his friend in a hurry, and he knew the fastest way. He hopped onto the stair rails and sailed whoosh down the stairs. "It's a ghost!" someone screamed. Everyone turned. They looked scared, and they were looking at George. The ghost must be right behind him. George flew off the rail and landed plop in the arms of a farmer. But this wasn't really a farmer. This was his friend, the man with the yellow hat. Soon everyone stopped looking scared and started to laugh. "That's not a ghost, that's a cowboy," laughed a policeman. That's not a cowboy, that's a monkey, giggled a princess. That's not any monkey, said Betsy. It's Curious George. Everyone clapped and cheered. They liked George's Halloween trick. You gave us a good scare, George, said Mrs. Gray. And I'm glad to see you found some interesting costumes. Now why don't I take your ghost outfit so you can join the party? After the guests bobbed for apples, lit jack-o'-lanterns and played some party games, prizes for the best costumes were handed out. There was one prize for Betsy, and one for Bill, and two for Curious George. You were the best ghost and the best cowboy, George, said Mrs. Gray. Everyone had a good time at the party, especially George. Too soon it was time to say goodbye. Good night, George. Happy Halloween! Scaredy Crow, a creature camper's Halloween story. A full bright moon lit the way for a clown, a pirate, a mushroom, and a sheriff. They followed a winding trail through the woods, fallen leaves crunching under their feet. The clown was very tall and very hairy. The sheriff had wings. The pirate's hat rested on the pirate's off antlers, and the mushroom had legs. The creature campers were wearing costumes. Halloween costumes, to be exact. How far until we get to the pumpkin patch? Whisper asked. He pushed his cowboy hat up off his eyes so that he could see the trail better. We're almost there, said Hazel, as she raced back and forth, spinning and dancing through the leaves. She stopped to lift up her eye patch and peered down the trail. Yep, just a little longer. I'm going to find the perfect pumpkin, said Olivia. I can't wait to carve a jack-o'-lantern at the Halloween party, said Norm. His huge clown shoes sent leaves flying into the air with every step. I'm going to pick out a big pumpkin, said Hazel. No, a medium-sized one. No, a round one. Or maybe an oval one. A smooth pumpkin. No, maybe a bumpy pumpkin. So many pumpkins to choose from. Are you sure you know the way? Olivia asked. I don't recognize these spooky trees. The shadows of bare branches looked like claws reaching out towards the campers. Bats filled through the night sky, and every once in a while a cloud would pass in front of the moon and cloak the forest in darkness. I know this way like the back of my hand, Hazel said, holding up her pirate's hook. Oops, I mean this one. She held up her other hand. At least the moon is a nice and bright, said Norm. Yep, that's a werewolf moon for sure, said Wisp. Nice and bright and full. My favorite. Werewolf? Olivia asked. Or a witch moon, said Hazel, bouncing along the trail. Witch? Asked Olivia. Or maybe a creepy crawly moon, said Norm. The kind that brings out the skeletons and zombies. Are you all trying to freak me out? Olivia asked. Because you are. It's working. I think it's working on all of us, Norm said, laughing nervously. The hair on his arms was standing